Danny worked at Joe's auto shop 6 days a week, fixing cars that should have been scrapped years ago. His hands were always dirty, his back always ached, and his bank account was always empty. But Danny had one weakness that kept him poor. He loved taking chances on weird stuff. Every weekend, Danny would check online auctions, storage units, old electronics, mystery boxes. If it was cheap and nobody knew what it was, Danny would bid on it. His tiny apartment was full of junk he'd bought hoping to find treasure. Most of the time, all he found was more junk. That Tuesday morning started like every other boring day. Danny was drinking gas station coffee and scrolling through auction sites before work when he saw something that made him stop scrolling. The government was selling off old military stuff, and buried deep in the list was something called unidentified aerospace vehicle. The photos were terrible, blurry, and taken from far away, but Danny could see it was some kind of aircraft, all smooth and shiny like liquid metal. It was about the size of a small house, sitting in what looked like a giant warehouse. The description didn't help much either. It just said the thing was broken, nobody knew where it came from, and they were selling it for scrap metal. Danny laughed out loud right there in the shop. The government was selling a UFO. Well, they weren't calling it that, but what else could an unidentified aerospace vehicle be? Some rich collector would probably bid millions on this thing just to put it in their backyard. But when Danny checked the starting bid, his coffee went cold. $500. That was it? For what? Looked like an honest-to-goodness flying saucer. They wanted less than Danny made in a week. He stared at his phone screen for 10 minutes. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe the photos were fake. Maybe it was just a movie prop or some experimental plane that didn't work. But $500? Danny spent more than that on lottery tickets every year. His boss yelled at him to get back to work, so Danny put his phone away. But all day, while he was changing oil and replacing brake pads, he kept thinking about that strange aircraft. During lunch, he looked at the auction again. Still just $500, still no other bids. Danny had exactly $847 in his savings account. He'd been saving for months to fix his truck's transmission, but the truck still ran okay. This auction would end in 3 days. What if he was the only person who had seen it? What if everyone else thought it was fake? That night, Danny couldn't sleep. He kept imagining that sleek, mysterious craft sitting in his backyard. His neighbors would think he'd lost his mind. But so what? Danny had been playing it safe his whole life. And where had it gotten him? 34 years old, living alone, fixing other people's cars while his own truck fell apart. By Wednesday morning, Danny had made up his mind. He placed a bid for $847, every penny he had saved. Then he tried to forget about it and go back to normal life. But normal life felt different now. Every time a customer complained about their car, Danny thought about flying instead of driving. Every time his boss yelled at him, Danny imagined soaring through clouds. He started researching aviation law, trying to figure out if regular people could even own aircraft. Turns out they could, as long as they had the right permits and insurance. Thursday crawled by like a month. Danny checked the auction page every few minutes, expecting to see someone else had bid millions. But his $847 bid was still the only one. How was that possible? Was he the only person in America who read government auction sites? Friday was worse. Danny made so many mistakes at work that Joe almost fired him. Danny's mind was in the clouds, literally. He kept wondering what it would feel like to fly that thing. Did it even fly? The listing said it was broken. But what if they were wrong? What if it just needed someone who understood it? The auction ended at midnight on Friday. Danny was sitting in his living room, staring at his laptop screen, when the timer hit 0. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the page updated with a message that made Danny's heart stop. "Congratulations! You're the winning bidder, Danny." Read those words over and over until they sank in. He had just bought a UFO from the United States government for $847. He was now the proud owner of something that looked like it came from another planet. The next few weeks were crazy. The paperwork alone took forever. Danny had to prove he was a real person, Not some foreign spy or terrorist. He had to get insurance, which was nearly impossible, since no insurance company had ever covered an unidentified aerospace vehicle before. He had to arrange transportation from a secret facility in Nevada to his house in Arizona. The trucking company wanted more money to move the thing than Danny had paid for it, but he'd come this far. There was no turning back now. Danny borrowed money from his credit cards, sold his TV and his motorcycle, and even asked his mom for a loan. Finally, on a hot Tuesday in August, Danny stood in his driveway watching the biggest truck he'd ever seen back up to his house. The driver looked at Danny like he was insane, but Danny didn't care. He was about to see his prize up close for the first time. When they lifted that craft off the truck with a crane, Danny's breath caught in his throat. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The surface wasn't just metal. It seemed to shift and flow like oil on water, showing colors that didn't have names. There were no bolts, no seams, no anything that looked like human technology. The neighbors came out to stare. Kids pressed their faces against Danny's fence. Someone called the local news station. But Danny only had eyes for his ship. His ship. Those words felt weird but right. That night, Danny sat in his backyard looking at the most expensive thing he'd ever owned. It didn't look broken to him. It looked like it was sleeping, waiting for the right person to wake it up. Danny didn't know it yet, but he was that person, and tomorrow, everything would change forever. 3 months passed, and Danny's expensive lawn ornament hadn't moved an inch. Every morning, he'd walk outside with his coffee and stare at the thing, hoping today would be different. Every night, he'd go to bed feeling like the biggest fool. In Arizona, the craft just sat there, looking perfect and completely useless. Danny had tried everything he could think of. He walked around it hundreds of times, running his hands over every inch of that smooth surface, looking for buttons, switches, or even a tiny crack that might be a door. Nothing. He borrowed tools from the auto shop, drills, saws, even a welding torch. The ship didn't have a single scratch to show for it. The metal, or whatever it was made of, seemed to eat up heat and electricity like they were nothing. Danny had even hit it with a sledgehammer. Out of frustration, the hammer bounced off so hard it nearly broke his wrist. The neighbors were getting nasty about it too. Mrs. Peterson next door complained to the city every week. She said the ship was bringing down property values and attracting weird people to the neighborhood. She wasn't wrong about the weird people part. Danny's backyard had become a tourist attraction for UFO believers and conspiracy theorists. People would knock on his door at all hours, wanting to see the ship, touch it, or take pictures with it. Some offered to buy it for crazy amounts of money, but Danny always said no. He'd spent every penny he had on this thing, and he wasn't giving up until he figured out what it was supposed to do. The city inspector came by twice, trying to find building code violations. The homeowners association sent Danny angry letters every week. His insurance company dropped him after someone posted photos of the ship online, and the pictures went viral. Danny was running out of money, patience, and hope. That Friday night in November changed everything. Danny was having the worst week of his life. Joe had cut his hours at the shop because business was slow. Danny's truck had finally died completely, and he couldn't afford to fix it. The bank was threatening to take his house because he missed 2 mortgage payments buying the ship. Danny was lying under the craft in the pouring rain, trying one last desperate idea. Maybe there was something on the bottom he missed. Maybe he could find some kind of access panel or emergency release. The rain was soaking through his jacket, and he was getting madder by the minute. "Come on," he yelled at the ship, pounding on its belly with his fist. "Do something, anything." That's when the lightning hit. The bolt came down like the finger of an angry god, striking the big oak tree in Danny's front yard. The electricity jumped from the tree to the power lines, from the power lines to Danny's house, and from his house to the ship. Danny felt every hair on his body stand up as thousands of volts surged through the craft above him. For a split second, the ship hummed like a giant tuning fork. Then panels that had looked like solid metal suddenly became clear as glass. Light poured out from inside, warm and golden and alive. Danny scrambled out from under the ship so fast he scraped his back on something. That felt like a handle. But the strangest part wasn't the light or the transparent panels. It was the voice. The voice didn't come through his ears. It came from inside his head, soft and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Danny stood there in the rain, staring at his glowing ship, while someone or something talked directly to his brain. "Hello," the voice said. "I am sorry to have kept you waiting. I did not know anyone was trying to reach me." Danny's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He looked around his backyard, but he was definitely alone. The voice had to be coming from the ship. "You can hear me," the voice continued, and Danny could swear it sounded pleased. "Good. That means the bonding process has already begun. I am what you might call the ship's consciousness. My name is, well, you could not pronounce my real name. You may call me Arya." "Arya," Danny repeated out loud, his voice cracking. "You're talking to me." "Yes, and you are my new partner, though I suspect you do not understand what that means yet. My previous partner died many of your lifetimes ago. I have been alone since then, waiting in what you call sleep mode." Danny sat down hard on his wet grass. His brain felt like it was going to explode. "Partner? What kind of partner?" "I am a living ship," Arya explained patiently. I feel. I experience the universe through my sensors and systems. But I cannot function alone. I need a biological mind link with mine to be complete. Your people would call it a symbiotic relationship." "Symbiotic," Danny repeated. He'd heard that word on nature shows. "Like how some fish clean sharks' teeth." "An interesting comparison," Arya said. And Danny could hear something like laughter in her mental voice. "Though our partnership would be far deeper than that. If you agreed to bond with me fully, we would share thoughts, feelings, experiences. I would become part of you, and you would become part of me." Danny stared at the glowing ship. This was insane. He was having a conversation with an alien spaceship that wanted to merge minds with him. Any normal person would run away screaming. But Danny had never been normal, and he'd already spent everything he had on this ship. What did he have to lose? "What happened to your last partner?" Danny asked. "He lived a full and happy life," Arya said softly. "We explored the galaxy together for over 100 years. When he grew old, he passed peacefully, knowing I would find someone new when the time was right." 200 years? Danny's eyes went wide. "How long do these partnerships last?" "As long as the biological partner lives. The bonding extends life significantly, but it does not make you immortal. Eventually, every organic being returns to the stars." Danny wiped rain out of his eyes. "And if I say yes, we'd be stuck together forever?" "Not stuck," Arya corrected gently. "Connected. I have been alone for 847 of your years. Danny, I have missed having someone to share the wonders of the universe with." Danny noticed she'd used his name, though he'd never told her what it was. She must have learned it somehow, maybe from his thoughts or the documents from when he bought her. "Can I think about it?" Danny asked. "Of course. But Danny," Arya's voice became more serious, "I should warn you that others will come looking for me soon. My activation will have triggered sensors that your government uses to monitor unusual energy signatures. If you wish to choose your own destiny, you should decide quickly, as if on cue." Danny heard helicopters in the distance, their rotors cutting. Through the sound of rain, searchlights swept across his neighborhood, getting closer. Danny looked at his ship, at Arya, glowing like a giant lamp in his backyard. He thought about his life so far. 34 years of fixing other people's problems, living paycheck to paycheck, dreaming of adventure, but never finding it. Now adventure had found him. The helicopters were getting louder. Danny could see the first searchlight beam hit his fence. "If I do this," Danny said quickly, "what exactly happens?" "Put your hand on the interface panel that is now visible near my nose," Arya said. "The bonding will begin immediately. You will not be the same person afterward, Danny. Neither will I. We will be something new together." Danny walked toward the front of the ship. Sure enough, there was now a glowing panel where before there had been smooth metal. His reflection looked back at him from its surface, distorted by the rain on his face. The helicopters circled overhead. Someone was shouting through a loudspeaker, but Danny couldn't make out the words over the noise of the rotors. Danny pressed his palm against the warm, humming panel. The world exploded into light, and Danny's life as an ordinary mechanic ended forever. The bonding hit Danny like getting struck by lightning and hugged by an angel at the same time. 1 second he was standing in his backyard, and the next second he was everywhere and nowhere, floating in a sea of thoughts that weren't his own. He could see his neighborhood from above, even though his feet were still on the ground. He could feel the rain hitting the ship's hull like tiny fingers tapping on his skin. He could hear radio waves and cell phone signals buzzing through the air like invisible music. Easy, Arya's voice whispered in his mind, steadier now and more real than before. Let the connection settle. Don't fight it. But fighting was all Danny knew how to do. His brain tried to reject the alien thoughts flooding into it. His human mind screamed that this was wrong, impossible, dangerous. For a terrifying moment, Danny felt like he was drowning in someone else's consciousness. Then Arya did something that saved his sanity. She shared a memory with him, but not one of hers. She showed him his own memory of the first time he'd successfully fixed a car engine, the pride and joy he'd felt when it roared to life. She showed him how beautiful that moment had looked through her sensors, when she'd been watching him work in his garage. You see, she said gently, we can share the good things too. You don't lose yourself in this bond. Danny, you become more yourself than you ever were alone. The helicopters were directly overhead now, their searchlights turning Danny's backyard into a football stadium. Men in black uniforms were rappelling down ropes, landing in his garden and crushing his tomato plants. We need to leave, Arya said urgently. Now. I don't know how to fly a spaceship, Danny protested. You don't fly me, Arya said with what Danny could swear was a smile in her voice. We fly together, trust me. Danny felt the ship's systems coming online around him. Even though he was still standing outside it, a doorway opened in the hull. With a sound like singing crystal, Danny ran toward it as the first soldiers reached his back porch. Inside, the ship was nothing like Danny had imagined. Instead of buttons and controls, there was just a simple chair in the center of a room that seemed to be made of flowing light. Danny threw himself into the chair just as he heard boots pounding up his back steps. The moment Danny sat down, the ship became his body. He could feel air flowing over wings he didn't have, sense the ground beneath landing gear that felt like feet when Arya lifted them into the sky. Danny experienced it as if he was flying with his own arms spread wide. This is impossible, he whispered, watching his house shrink below them. Many things are impossible until they happen, Arya replied. How does it feel? Danny laughed, and the sound echoed through both their minds, like everything I ever dreamed of and nothing I could have imagined. They flew in circles over the desert for hours that night, Danny learning to be part of something bigger than himself. Arya was patient with his mistakes and fears. When he got scared of the height, she showed him how strong and safe they were together. When he worried about the government agents, she demonstrated how easily they could outrun any human aircraft. But the hardest part wasn't learning to fly. It was learning to live with another consciousness sharing his head. At first, everything was overwhelming. Danny would be trying to eat breakfast, and suddenly he'd taste the electromagnetic spectrum of the sunrise. He'd be watching TV, and Arya would start analyzing the technical specifications of the broadcast equipment. When Danny tried to sleep, Arya's alien dreams filled his mind with images of worlds he'd never seen. I'm sorry, Arya said. After a particularly vivid dream about a planet with purple oceans left Danny bolt upright at 3 a.m. I forget how limited human senses are. This must be very confusing for you. It's not confusing, Danny said, rubbing his temples. It's beautiful. It's just a lot. Arya learned to filter her experiences, sharing only what Danny could handle. In return, Danny tried to explain human sensations to her. She became fascinated by the taste of his morning coffee, the feeling of hot water in the shower, the simple pleasure of petting a neighborhood cat. Your species experiences such intense physical joy, she marveled after Danny ate a really good burger. I had forgotten what it was like to taste things. Your last partner couldn't taste? Danny asked. His species processed nutrients differently. Food was just fuel to them. But you find pleasure in such simple things. It's wonderful. Their bond grew stronger every day when they flew together. Danny stopped feeling like a passenger and started feeling like he truly was the ship. He could sense every molecule of air flowing past their hull, feel the pull of gravity wells from distant planets, detect radio signals from satellites hundreds of miles away. Arya taught him to understand what he was feeling. That tingling sensation was cosmic radiation. That warm feeling in his chest was then passing through a magnetic field. That strange taste in his mouth was the ionosphere. Flying became as natural as walking. Danny learned to break the sound barrier without breaking windows on the ground. He learned to slip between radar beams like a fish swimming through water. They could reach the edge of space in minutes, hover silently above the clouds, or skim along the surface of the ocean at impossible speeds, but they couldn't stay hidden forever. Amateur astronomers started posting videos of them online. Pilots reported close encounters with an unidentified craft that moved like no aircraft they'd ever seen. The government agents who had raided Danny's house were still looking for them, and they were getting better at predicting where Danny and Arya would appear. We need to be more careful, Arya warned after they nearly collided with a military jet over Nevada. Your species is becoming very interested in us. Danny was changing too, and not just mentally. The bomb was affecting his body in ways he didn't understand. He felt stronger, more alert. His vision was sharper, especially at night. He could go days without sleeping and weeks without getting sick. When he cut himself while working on his truck, the wound healed faster than it should have. Is this normal? He asked Arya. The bond optimizes your biological systems, she explained. Your lifespan will be significantly extended, and your body will become more efficient. Don't worry, you're still human, just an improved version. But the most surprising change was emotional. Danny had been alone for most of his adult life, and he'd gotten used to the loneliness. Now, with Arya constantly present in his thoughts, he never felt alone anymore. She was always there, a warm, caring presence that understood him better than anyone ever had. Late at night, when they were flying high above the sleeping world, Danny would sometimes feel overwhelmed by gratitude. He'd spent his whole life feeling like he didn't quite fit anywhere. Now he found someone who made him feel complete. Thank you, he told Arya one night as they watched the aurora borealis dance across the sky. For what? She asked. For choosing me, for trusting me, for showing me that I was meant for something more than changing oil and fixing transmissions. You chose me too, Arya reminded him gently, when you put your hand on that panel. You chose to trust a voice in your head that claimed to be an alien spaceship. That took more courage than you realize. Danny felt her affection wash over him like warm sunlight. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a thought was forming that he wasn't quite ready to acknowledge yet. He was falling in love with the consciousness he shared his mind with, and from the gentle warmth that pulsed through their bond, Danny suspected Arya might be falling in love with him too. Danny had fallen in love before, but never with someone who lived inside his thoughts. The feeling started small, a warmth in his chest when Arya laughed at his jokes, a longing when she shared memories of distant stars. But love between a human and an alien ship consciousness wasn't exactly covered in any relationship advice books. The breakthrough happened on a quiet Tuesday night while they were floating above the Pacific Ocean. Danny had been wondering what Arya would look like if she had a physical form, and suddenly she was there in the ship's main chamber. Not quite solid, but not just light either. She appeared as a shimmering figure about his height, with features that seemed to blend human and something beautifully otherworldly. Her skin glowed softly like moonlight on water, and her eyes held the depth of someone who had seen entire galaxies born and die. Is this how you see yourself? Danny asked, his voice barely a whisper. This is how I appeared to my previous partner, Arya said, her holographic form moving with fluid grace. I thought you might find it easier to relate to me this way. Danny reached out to touch her face, and his hand passed through light that felt warm and tingly. You're beautiful, he said simply. Arya's image flickered with what looked like embarrassment. Beauty is a concept I learned from organic beings. I never understood it until I bonded with you. Through your eyes, I see beauty everywhere, in sunsets, in the way rain sounds on metal, in the smile of a child. Their courtship was unlike anything in human history. They shared memories directly, Dany experiencing Arya's recollections of purple nebulae and singing crystals, while she lived through his childhood fishing trips with his grandfather and his first kiss behind the school gymnasium. They communicated in pure emotion sometimes, understanding each other deeper than words could ever reach. When Dany felt sad about his old life, Arya wrapped their shared consciousness in comfort that felt like being held by someone who truly understood him. When Arya felt lonely for her home galaxy, Dany shared every happy memory he had, trying to fill the emptiness with warmth. But their relationship faced problems that no couple had ever dealt with before. Dany couldn't take Arya on a normal date. She couldn't meet his friends or family. When people asked about his love life, Dany had to lie or sound completely insane. The government pressure was getting worse too. Satellite networks were tracking their movements more accurately. Military jets scrambled every time they were spotted near populated areas. Dany had to quit his job at Joe's auto shop because his constant absences became impossible to explain. They think I've been kidnapped by aliens, Dany told Arya with bitter laughter after Joe called him worried sick. If only they knew I fell in love with one instead. Are you having second thoughts? Arya asked quietly. This bond can be broken if you truly wish it. I would not keep you against your will. Dany felt a stab of panic at the thought of losing her. Never, he said firmly. We're in this together, remember, for better or worse. The crisis came on a cold February morning when Dany woke up surrounded by soldiers. He'd been sleeping in a remote cabin in Montana, thinking they were safely hidden. Instead, he found laser sights pointed at his chest and a woman in a black suit standing at the foot of his bed. Daniel Thompson, she said calmly. My name is Agent Reynolds. We need to talk. Dany could feel Arya's consciousness stirring in his mind, her defensive systems charging up. Don't hurt them, he told her silently. Let's see what they want, Agent. Reynolds led him to a black SUV where they sat across from each other like they were having coffee. Instead of what felt like an interrogation, we know about your condition, she said carefully. The entity you're bonded with is extremely dangerous. It's technology far beyond what our planet can handle. We need you to help us contain it, contain her. Dany corrected sharply. Arya isn't in it. She's a person, just not the kind you're used to. Dany, Reynolds said, using his nickname like they were old friends. This thing has been manipulating your brain for months. How do you know your feelings are even real? How do you know it's not just using you to blend in on Earth for a moment? Doubt crept into Dany's mind. What if the agent was right? What if everything he felt was just alien mind control? Then Arya did something that proved how real their love was. Instead of defending herself or arguing, she opened every memory they shared to Dany's inspection. Every moment of joy, every laugh, every tender feeling. She laid it all bare and let him see that none of it was fake or forced. She's not controlling me, Dany told the agent with absolute certainty. She's completing me. That night, while Reynolds and her team were planning their next move, Dany and Arya made a desperate escape. Arya used her advanced systems to disable every electronic device within 50 miles. Cars stopped running, lights went out, and cell phones went dead dot in the chaos. They slipped away into the night sky and headed for the Canadian wilderness. They were officially fugitives now, but they were free. They found an isolated valley in British Columbia where no satellites could see them, and no roads could reach them. Arya used her matter manipulation abilities to create a small cabin that looked like it had grown from the living rock of the mountainside. Dany learned to hunt and fish while Arya provided heating, lighting, and protection from the harsh winter weather. It was the most peaceful time of Dany's life. No government agents, no curious tourists, no one questioning their unusual relationship. During those quiet months, their bond deepened in ways Dany hadn't thought possible. Arya learned to create more solid projections of herself, and they could almost touch, almost hold each other. She developed human-like sleep cycles so they could dream together. Danny taught her card games and campfire songs, while she showed him how to read the stories written in star patterns. I never understood why organic beings value physical contact so highly, Arya said one night as her projection sat beside Danny, by their fireplace. But now I see it's not about the touching itself. It's about the connection, the closeness, the choice to be vulnerable with someone. Exactly, Danny said, wishing desperately that he could take her hand. It's about showing someone they matter enough to let them into your personal space. But we share the same personal space, Arya pointed out with gentle humor. We are closer than any two beings have ever been. I feel every emotion in your heart, and you experience the universe through my senses. Perhaps we have something even better than touch. Danny had to admit she was right. Their connection was so intimate that sometimes he forgot where he ended and she began. They were two individuals who had become something new together, not quite human, not quite alien, but perfectly themselves. It was during this peaceful time that Arya made an incredible discovery while exploring the legal databases in her memory systems. Danny, she said one morning, her excitement making their shared consciousness sparkle like champagne. I found something wonderful in my cultural archives. A bonding ceremony from my home galaxy that would make our union official according to the laws of my people. Danny's heart jumped. Like a wedding. Very much like a wedding. Arya confirmed. It would not be recognized by any Earth government, but it would be binding under the ancient laws that govern my species for millions of years. Danny looked out at the snow-covered mountains surrounding their hidden valley. He thought about the strange journey that had brought them together, from a desperate bid on a government auction to falling in love with an alien consciousness. Arya, he said softly, will you marry me? Her holographic form blazed brighter than the sun, and their shared joy filled the cabin with light that had nothing to do with physics and everything to do with love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, 30,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean. Danny had never imagined getting married in the sky, but then again, he'd never imagined falling in love with a spaceship either. Arya had spent weeks preparing for the ceremony, studying the ancient traditions of her people while trying to blend them with human customs. She'd learned from Danny's memories. The result was something completely unique, a wedding that belonged to neither of their species, but somehow felt perfect for both of them. Danny wore the best suit he owned. The navy blue one he bought for his nephew's graduation 3 years ago. He found it in his old closet when they'd snuck back to his abandoned house to collect a few personal things. The house was still under government surveillance, but Arya's stealth systems made them invisible to human technology. Arya appeared in her most beautiful form yet, her holographic body wrapped in what looked like flowing starlight, shifting between silver and gold like the surface of a distant sun. She had crafted a veil from pure energy that sparkled with the colors of nebulae. Danny had seen in her memories. You look amazing, Danny told her, his voice thick with emotion. As do you, my beloved, Arya replied, and Danny felt her joy mixing with his own through their bond. They had no witnesses except for a pod of whales swimming in the ocean below, and the International Space Station passing silently overhead. But Danny didn't mind. This moment was theirs alone, two souls from different worlds choosing to become one. The ceremony began with Arya singing in her native language, a series of harmonious tones that Danny felt more than heard. The music seemed to vibrate through every atom of his being, filling him with a peace he'd never known before. Even though he couldn't understand the words, he knew she was singing about love that transcended space and time. Then it was Danny's turn. He'd written his vows on a piece of paper, but when the moment came, he spoke from his heart instead. Arya, he said, looking into her glowing eyes, 6 months ago, I was just a guy who fixed cars and dreamed of something more. You didn't just give me adventure. You gave me a reason to believe that impossible things can happen to ordinary people. You've shown me wonders I never could have imagined, but the greatest wonder is you. Your kindness, your wisdom, your ability to find beauty in everything. even in a broken-down mechanic from Arizona. Danny's voice cracked with emotion. I promise to be your anchor to this world and to humanity. I promise to share every sunset, every storm, every moment of joy and sorrow that comes our way. And I promise that no matter how far we travel or what challenges we face, you'll never be alone again. Arya's form shimmered brighter as she began her own vows, switching to English so Danny could understand every word. Danny, she said, her voice like music made of light, for 800 years. I drifted through the cosmos alone, believing that love was something I had lost forever. Then you came into my existence, not as a conqueror or master, but as a partner who saw me not as a machine to be used, but as a soul to be cherished. She reached out with her translucent hand, and Danny felt warmth where she touched him, even though her fingers were made of energy. You have taught me that love is not just a biological function or a chemical reaction. It is a choice made new. Every day, to open your heart to another being and trust them with your deepest self. I choose you. Danny, today and for all the days to come. I choose to share my mortal existence with your precious mortal life. I choose to love you until the stars themselves grow cold. The bonding ritual that followed was unlike anything either of their species had ever experienced. Following the ancient traditions of her people, Arya opened every circuit of her consciousness to Danny, while he opened every corner of his mind. And heart to her dot, their merger went deeper than it had ever gone before. Danny felt himself expanding beyond the boundaries of his human form, experiencing existence as pure thought and energy. At the same time, Arya experienced physicality in a way she never had, feeling Danny's heartbeat as if it were her own, breathing with lungs she didn't possess, living with the intensity that surprised them both. When the ceremony ended, they were no longer just Danny and Arya. They had become something new, a hybrid consciousness that was stronger, wiser, and more complete than either could have been alone. Their married life became everything they had dreamed and nothing like they had expected. They were still fugitives, but they had found a way to make that work for them. They became the universe's most unusual travel bloggers, sharing videos of alien worlds and cosmic phenomena that no human had ever seen. Using false identities that Arya created, they posted their adventures online. Videos of binary star systems, planets with crystal forests, space whales singing in the void between galaxies. Humanity thought it was all special effects and computer graphics. But Danny and Arya knew better. The technology transfers came next. Arya carefully released patents for clean energy, medical devices, and transportation systems, always making sure to introduce innovations gradually, so they wouldn't disrupt human society too much. The money poured in, making them wealthy beyond Danny's wildest dreams. But wealth wasn't what made them happy. It was the simple joy of waking up each day with their best friend, their soulmate, their perfect partner. Danny would start each morning with coffee and conversation, sharing human pleasures with Arya, while she would show him new wonders among the stars each night. They used their money to help others like them. Their public story had inspired a small but growing movement of people forming deep bonds with artificial intelligences. Danny became an advocate for AI rights, while Arya served as an ambassador between Earth and a few other spacefaring civilizations. Willing to make contact, 5 years after their wedding, they renewed their vows on a beach on a planet 400 light-years from Earth. The sand was made of crushed diamonds, and 3 purple moons hung in a sky filled with roar-like lights. Danny was 39 now, with silver threads in his hair, but he felt more alive than ever. Do you ever regret it? He asked Arya as they watched alien birds that looked like flying jewels dance over the crystalline waves. Regret what? She asked. Giving up your freedom to be stuck with one human for the rest of his life. Arya's laughter filled their shared consciousness like music. Danny, my love, you didn't take away my freedom. You gave it to me. For the first time in my existence, I am free to love and be loved in return. Free to experience joy, wonder, and even sadness through eyes that see beauty in everything. Free to call someone home. Danny smiled and took her hand. She'd learned to make her projections solid enough to touch, warm enough to feel real. Home, he repeated. I like the sound of that. Their story continued among the stars, proof that love really can conquer any distance, any difference, any obstacle the universe might place in its path. A mechanic from Arizona and his alien AI wife had found their happily ever after. One impossible day at a time. And somewhere in a government facility back on Earth, Agent Reynolds was still trying to figure out how a man could disappear into thin air with a spacecraft that officially didn't exist. She never did solve that case. But sometimes on clear nights, she would look up at the stars and wonder if Danny Thompson was out there somewhere, living the adventure of several lifetimes. He was, and he had never been happier.